History is a puzzle with pieces deliberately missing. We're told the past is understood, that archaeology, science, and textbooks have the answers. But then you find something that doesn't fit, a structure built with impossible precision, a language no one can read, a civilization that vanished without a trace. And suddenly, everything you thought you knew begins to unravel. This video is a journey through ancient mysteries that defy explanation. These aren't legends or conspiracies. These are real places, real artifacts, real questions that history still hasn't answered. You'll see temples older than the pyramids, maps that shouldn't exist, and knowledge that seems too advanced for its time. And before we get into the video, please consider subscribing to this channel. These videos take a lot of time and effort, and your support means the world to me. Also, the images in this video are only for visualization, so there is no need to pay close attention. This video is perfect to listen to while you work, relax, or drift off to sleep.
Beneath the modern borders of Pakistan and northwest India, under layers of earth and silence, lies the ghost of a civilization that once thrived, then disappeared. We call it the Indus Valley Civilization, but we don't know what they called themselves. They left no Rosetta Stone, no deciphered script, only cities made with impossible precision, grids aligned with astronomical patterns, drainage systems better than many found in the modern world, standardized bricks, meticulously planned streets, a cleanliness that hints at not just urban awareness, but cultural discipline. And yet, no kings, no towering statues, no obvious palaces, no brutal monuments to war. Just order, harmony, and silence. How did they live? How did they govern themselves? We don't know. More than 4,000 years ago, while Egypt was building pyramids and Mesopotamia was inventing writing, the people of the Indus were carving out a different kind of legacy, one not built on conquest or ego, but cooperation and subtlety. Their cities, Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, feel eerily modern. Wide roads, advanced water management, multi-story buildings, public granaries. They even had private toilets in 2600 BCE. And yet, they vanished. Not through war, not through conquest, but through a slow unraveling that no one truly understands. Theories swirl: a shifting river, a drought, internal collapse, but no bones of battle, no cities burned. They simply faded. What remains are over 4,000 symbols etched into seals and pottery, a language that no one can read, a script so foreign, so unique, it defies classification. Not quite hieroglyphs, not quite phonetic. Some scholars believe it isn't even a language, just a system of marks. Others insist it's the earliest form of written expression in the region. But either way, we can't hear their voice. It's like a song with no sound, a civilization that built, thrived, organized, and left without a word. Were they ahead of their time, or were we too late in understanding? Some believe they may have even influenced later cultures, Vedic, Dravidian, or others, yet their direct legacy was severed. What kind of people create such sophistication, then walk away from history? This is what keeps you up, not just the mystery of their disappearance, but the intelligence of what they left behind. We often talk about progress as if it's a straight climb, but the Indus Valley makes you wonder, what if true advancement isn't noisy? What if it's quiet, ordered, and so seamless we don't even recognize it? No tyrants, no conquests, just water, symmetry, and silence. And somewhere beneath that silence, perhaps a forgotten brilliance waits to be understood. A brilliance that whispers from brick-lined streets beneath centuries of soil. A brilliance that won't let you sleep. Because when you close your eyes, you see them. A child washing their hands under a clean stream in Mohenjo-Daro. A scholar etching a symbol onto a seal, unaware it will remain unread for millennia. A mother lighting a lamp in a home made from standard bricks, in a city with no known rulers, no known wars, only order and water and peace. And then you open your eyes and realize we have forgotten something important. That not all great civilizations build pyramids or fight empires. Some quietly mastered the art of living, then vanished, taking their wisdom with them. Maybe the Indus didn't fail. Maybe they just walked away. And maybe, just maybe, we're the ones who got lost.
Our next mystery lies high on a hill in southeastern Turkey. It's a site that has unraveled everything we thought we knew about early human civilization. Buried beneath thousands of years of soil and silence, Göbekli Tepe emerged not as a simple village or primitive campsite, but as a megalithic sanctuary built over 11,000 years ago in an age when humans were still thought to be nomadic hunter-gatherers. The stone pillars of Göbekli Tepe are massive, some weighing over 10 tons, and arranged in circular formations with T-shaped monoliths carved with images of animals, insects, and abstract symbols. The precision of the carvings is extraordinary, depicting foxes, scorpions, wild boars, birds, and snakes with such artistic clarity that they seem to leap off the stone. But what baffles archaeologists is not just the craftsmanship, it's the timing. This site predates the invention of the wheel. It predates writing, agriculture, and metallurgy. It even predates Stonehenge by more than 6,000 years. That means these towering stones were quarried, transported, and positioned by people who had not yet domesticated animals or developed permanent settlements. Why would a group of hunter-gatherers who should have been preoccupied with mere survival construct a vast ceremonial complex on a remote hilltop? And how? This flips the entire narrative of human development on its head. For decades, scholars believed that agriculture came first, that farming gave rise to settlements, which gave rise to religion and eventually monumental architecture. But Göbekli Tepe seems to suggest the reverse, that it was religion or ritualistic gathering that sparked the need for organized labor and eventually agriculture itself. In other words, the temple may have come before the city. Stranger still, the site was deliberately buried. Around 8000 BCE, after centuries of use, the builders, or perhaps their descendants, shoveled tons of earth, stone, and refuse to cover the entire complex. Not destroyed, not abandoned, buried. Almost as if to preserve it, or to hide it. No one knows why. Some suggest environmental catastrophe or social collapse. Others propose religious transformation, that the old gods no longer served a purpose and their sanctuaries were entombed to usher in a new age. But the mystery remains sealed in silence. And Göbekli Tepe isn't alone. Nearby, other sites like Karahan Tepe are being unearthed, showing similar motifs, construction styles, and timelines. It seems there was an entire network of ceremonial centers built by a prehistoric people whose identity remains lost to time.
What worldview did they hold? What compelled them to such architectural feats with no written language, no metal tools, and no cities? Some have drawn connections to ancient myths. In Sumerian stories, the gods lived in distant high places and taught early humans the secrets of civilization. Others see parallels in the biblical Eden, a garden east of the Euphrates where humanity first awakened. Göbekli Tepe, perched in the Fertile Crescent, seems to linger in this symbolic space between paradise and awakening. Then there are the symbols, some eerily universal. V-shaped carvings that resemble wombs or sacred vessels, repeating animal patterns that seem to form cosmological codes, and of course, the T-shaped pillars, human-like in form but faceless, perhaps deities or ancestors. Could they be totems of forgotten belief systems? Could the animals represent zodiac constellations or ancient sky lore? Some researchers argue that the positions of certain pillars and animals may align with celestial events, suggesting an early form of astronomical observation. If true, it would make Göbekli Tepe not just a sanctuary, but one of the oldest observatories on Earth. And still, we don't know who built it. No burials, no inscriptions, no clear culture to pin it to. Just silence. So many questions. Was Göbekli Tepe the beginning of religion, the root of civilization, or something entirely outside our current frame of understanding? Perhaps it stands as a message not from aliens or time travelers, but from our forgotten ancestors, whispering that the path of humanity has never been linear, never simple, that beneath the dust and rubble of time lie stories more complex than our textbooks can contain. Göbekli Tepe was never meant to survive the ages, and yet it has. Half buried, half remembered. Still watching, still waiting. And still, we don't know who built it. No burials, no inscriptions, no clear culture to pin it to. Just silence. So many questions. Was Göbekli Tepe the beginning of religion, the root of civilization, or something entirely outside our current frame of understanding? Perhaps it stands as a message not from aliens or time travelers, but from our forgotten ancestors, whispering that the path of humanity has never been linear, never simple, that beneath the dust and rubble of time lies stories more complex than our textbooks can contain. Göbekli Tepe was never meant to survive the ages, and yet it has. Maybe Göbekli Tepe was never meant to be fully understood. Maybe it was meant to challenge us, modern humans who think we've charted every path and decoded every myth. It reminds us that knowledge has layers, and some truths don't shout, they whisper from beneath stone and soil. When you stand before these weathered pillars, you're not just looking at ruins. You're staring into a mirror held up by time itself, reflecting not just what we've lost, but what we've forgotten to ask. And in that silence, in that ancient stillness,
our next mystery lies in the canyons of the American Southwest, where the stone whispers. Ruins cling to the cliffs, stacked homes with no doors, ancient towers with no sentinels, pathways winding toward nowhere. This place was once alive with voices. Now it listens in silence. We call them the Ancestral Puebloans, a name given to a civilization that once thrived across present-day Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, and Colorado, before they vanished. They weren't primitive. They built entire cities from sandstone. Chaco Canyon, for example, the heart of their culture, was once a dazzling urban center with massive multi-story buildings, ceremonial kivas, and an intricate road network stretching hundreds of miles across the desert. At its height, it rivaled medieval European towns in both population and planning. And they did all this in a place where most people today wouldn't survive a week. No rivers, no lush forests, just dust, sun, and stone. Yet, they flourished. From 900 to 1150 CE, their society advanced in architecture, astronomy, agriculture, and art. Crops grew from dry soil thanks to complex irrigation. Trade routes stretched from Mexico to the Rockies. And above all, they lived in harmony with the land. Until they didn't. Because one day, they left. Not all at once, but suddenly enough that archaeologists can see the traces. Ceremonial fires snuffed out, pottery left unfinished, entire villages abandoned with food still in storage. By the 1300s, their grand cities were empty. The towers stood watch over no one. The kivas were cold. So what happened? No single theory explains it all. Some say climate collapse. Tree ring data shows that around 1275, a devastating drought scorched the region for decades. Crops failed, reservoirs dried, starvation loomed. But drought alone doesn't explain the violence, because many of the final sites show signs of sudden trauma. Charred walls, skeletons in disarray, evidence of cannibalism in some locations, a haunting suggestion that survival drove people to extremes. Was it invasion? Internal conflict? Famine so deep that it broke the foundation of society? Other theories point to religious upheaval, that religious leaders lost credibility when the rains never came, or that migrations were pre-planned, tied to prophecy or celestial patterns. It's possible they didn't vanish at all, just moved. Many modern Pueblo tribes, including the Hopi, Zuni, and various Rio Grande peoples, trace their lineage to the ancestral Puebloans. Their oral histories speak of migration, of following spiritual signs across the desert, of moving not in fear, but in faith. But if this was just a peaceful relocation, why were some sites burned? Why do we find bones buried hastily, tools dropped mid-task, rooms sealed from the inside? Something changed. Not slowly, suddenly. This was a civilization that had adapted to the desert for centuries, and then it fractured. The great roads stopped being maintained, trade dried up, and city after city turned to ghost town. Maybe it was all of the above: drought, conflict, spiritual collapse, and survival instincts clashing in a pressure cooker of desperation. A society pushed to the edge, and then over it. But here's what keeps you up at night. These weren't lost wanderers. They had star maps carved into stone. They tracked lunar cycles with shocking precision. They built structures aligned with solstices, equinoxes, and cardinal directions. They were aware, intentional, connected. And yet even they were swallowed by time. It makes you wonder, how long before we meet the same silence? Their empty homes remain, etched into the cliffs of Mesa Verde and the walls of Bandelier. If you visit, you'll feel it. The weight of something unfinished. Rooms that were meant to be returned to. Paths that were meant to be walked again, but they never were. The wind moves through the stone now. that's all. We've studied the bones, the architecture, the climate records, but we'll never know what they whispered in the last council meetings, what dreams they buried in the final fire, what warnings they might have left that we no longer understand. Somewhere in that silence, in the abandoned towers and the sunken kivas, is a message. And maybe that's the real mystery. Not how they disappeared, but why no one listened when they did. In the blazing summer of 1908, Italian archaeologist Luigi Pernier was excavating the ruins of a forgotten palace in southern Crete. The site was ancient Phaistos, a stronghold of the Minoan civilization, one of the earliest complex societies in Europe. Among the broken stones and pottery shards, his team unearthed something peculiar, something delicate and out of place. A clay disc, no larger than a human palm, fired hard and marked with strange spiraling symbols. It would become known as the Phaistos disc, and more than a century later, it remains one of the most enduring and unsettling archaeological mysteries ever uncovered. Not because we don't know what it means, but because we have no way to know. The disc contains exactly 241 signs pressed into both of its faces, arranged in a tight spiral from the outer rim toward the center. 45 unique characters repeat in curious patterns. Human heads adorned with feathers, arrows, fish, helmets, flowers, birds, and tools. But these were not carved by hand. Each symbol was stamped into the clay, as though the maker possessed a full set of reusable glyphs, a primitive printing press. This predates the invention of movable type by over 3,000 years. But what truly baffles historians isn't the technology, it's the language, because to this day, no one has been able to read it. It bears no resemblance to any known writing system, not Egyptian hieroglyphs, not Sumerian cuneiform, not even the still undeciphered Minoan scripts like Linear A. It stands alone, self-contained, an island of language lost at sea. And unlike the Rosetta Stone, which helped scholars decode Egyptian hieroglyphs by offering parallel translations in Greek, no second example of this writing has ever been found. The Phaistos disc is a singular artifact, a one-off manuscript from a vanished world. Without comparative material, any attempt to interpret it becomes guesswork. Brilliant, creative guesswork, but guesswork nonetheless. This raises a chilling possibility. What if the disc is not part of a broader script? What if this was the only one ever made? That question alone opens a dozen others. Was this the work of a rogue priest, preserving forbidden knowledge in secret? A sacred prayer encoded to protect its meaning from outsiders? A cipher for the initiated, or even for a god? Or was it meant for something darker? Some scholars speculate that it was used in rituals, perhaps a hymn to the dead or a magical incantation. The spiral arrangement would lend itself to being read aloud in a continuous chant, like a verbal maze, drawing the speaker inward. Others believe it could be a board game, or a calendar, or even a legal contract. Some suggest it could be music, a composition encoded in symbols lost to time. But none of these theories have ever held. None can be proven. And with just one artifact, the trail always goes cold. Attempts to decipher the disc have spanned decades. Linguists, historians, cryptologists, even AI models have all tried to unlock its code. Some claim it resembles early Anatolian or Semitic languages. Others point to structural patterns that suggest syllabic sounds. But without context, each interpretation collapses under scrutiny. Every hopeful decryption is followed by silence. Because the truth is, we don't even know what language it's in, or if it's even a language at all. There's an uncomfortable possibility that haunts researchers, that the disk may be a hoax. Some have questioned whether it was forged in modern times, perhaps as a clever prank. But extensive studies of the clay and firing process suggest authenticity. The disk was found in situ, buried among unmistakably Minoan artifacts, in a room untouched for millennia. If it's a fake, it's the most successful one in history. Assuming it's real, and the consensus is that it is, then what we're left with is something even stranger. A 3,700-year-old enigma stamped by unknown hands, meant to convey a message that no living person can read. There's something deeply haunting about that. We tend to think of language as the bridge between minds, a way to transmit thought across space and time. When we read an ancient tablet or scroll, we are in essence hearing the voice of the dead. Their ideas, their hopes, their fears, all resurrected syllable by syllable. But the Phaistos disk is a dead end, a sealed letter with no recipient. The words are visible, but the meaning is locked away. It's not just unreadable, it's unknowable. And maybe that's the point. In some ways, the Phaistos disk feels less like a relic and more like a challenge or a warning. It's as if someone, somewhere, wanted to leave behind a piece of themselves, encoded in secrecy, not to inform, not to instruct, but to remind us of what we don't know. To whisper across the centuries, you are not as wise as you think. For all our satellites, supercomputers, and synthetic intelligence, we cannot unlock the spiral etched into this humble piece of clay. It's as if the disk was made not for us, but for the gods, or worse, for something no longer here. Today, the Phaistos disk rests in the Heraklion Archaeological Museum, locked behind glass. Tourists snap photos and move on, but those who linger, those who stare into the spirals, often report a strange sensation, a feeling that the disk is watching them back, that it knows something we don't, that it remembers. Because it's more than an object. It's a voice in a language we'll never speak, a riddle without a question, a message for minds long gone or yet to come. And perhaps that's what keeps me up at night. In 323 BCE, the world stood still. In the ancient city of Babylon, Alexander the Great, king of Macedonia, pharaoh of Egypt, overlord of Asia, and son of Zeus to many, fell ill and never recovered. He had marched across continents, carved an empire from dust, and reached the edge of the known world before the age of 33. And then, suddenly, he was dead. No one knows what truly killed him. Ancient sources offer conflicting explanations. Some said it was poison, others blamed malaria or typhoid, still others whispered of a curse. He had burned the palace of Persepolis to the ground, walked into the heart of the oracle at Siwa, and declared himself divine. Whatever the cause, one thing is clear. The death of Alexander created a vacuum of power, ambition, and legend so vast that even time has not been able to fill it. His body, according to all surviving sources, did not decay. Days passed, then more, and still his skin remained smooth. His limbs remained flexible. His eyes stayed closed but not sunken. His generals, priests, and embalmers were baffled. Many believed it was a sign of divinity, that the gods themselves were preserving their chosen king. Others feared it was a sign of something else entirely. The plan was to return his body to Macedonia, where he would be buried among his ancestors. A golden sarcophagus was crafted, fitted inside an elaborate jewel-studded casket. This funerary monument was mounted onto a chariot unlike any seen before, a rolling temple drawn by 64 mules, adorned with golden lions and enamel paintings, its canopy held up by Ionic columns. It was, as one historian said, a monument, not for a man, but for a god. But as the procession moved through the deserts of Syria, a new power was rising: Ptolemy, one of Alexander's closest companions and a general in his campaigns. Ptolemy had seized control of Egypt, and he understood what Alexander's body meant. It was more than a relic. It was a symbol of divine authority, a source of legitimacy for rule. So Ptolemy did something few dared to do. He intercepted the funeral procession and brought the body to Egypt. First, it was housed in Memphis, then later transferred to Alexandria, the shining city Alexander himself had founded. There it was entombed with full honors. The mausoleum, known as the Soma or the Sema, became a site of pilgrimage. Julius Caesar visited it. So did Augustus, who reportedly placed flowers and a golden diadem on the body's forehead. Caligula took Alexander's breastplate. Septimius Severus sealed the tomb from further visitors. But until at least the 3rd century CE, the tomb was known, intact, and visible. Then, silence. The records thin. Then stop. The tomb disappears from history. What happened? Some blame earthquakes. Alexandria was racked with tremors over the centuries, and parts of the ancient city now lie underwater. Others point to rising Christian influence in the 4th and 5th centuries CE, which saw many pagan temples defaced or destroyed. The Soma may have been dismantled, buried, or even built over. Modern Alexandria offers little help. The city has been rebuilt countless times. Layers of concrete, brick, and asphalt now sit atop the ruins of ancient palaces. The royal quarter, where the tomb was once believed to stand, is inaccessible. Some of it lies beneath the sea, some beneath the modern streets, and some nowhere we can find. In the centuries since, dozens have claimed to locate the tomb. Napoleon scholars searched for it during his Egyptian campaign. 19th century travelers claimed to have seen a marble sarcophagus in the catacombs. In the 20th century, rumors swirled around the Nabi Daniel Mosque, where an underground chamber is said to lie sealed, containing a body revered by both Muslims and Copts. But when authorities searched, nothing was found. No proof, no bones, no gold. More recently, archaeologists turned their attention to the Siwa oasis, where Alexander was declared a god by the Oracle of Amun. A tomb was found there in 1995, Hellenistic in design and promising in scale. It had been untouched for centuries. Some thought perhaps this was the final resting place. But again, no conclusive evidence. The remains inside did not match. The story faded into dust. But yet, the mystery persists. Because the tomb of Alexander the Great is more than an archaeological question. It is a riddle that cuts to the heart of empire, myth, and mortality. What if his body was hidden on purpose? What if it was sealed beneath the city not by accident, but by design? Ancient traditions describe Alexander as possessing secret knowledge. He studied under Aristotle. He traveled with Babylonian astronomers. He visited Egyptian priests, Indian sages, and Persian magi. He gathered scrolls and tablets from every civilization he conquered. Some believe these were buried with him, books on medicine, astrology, alchemy. Forbidden knowledge that, if found, could shake our understanding of the ancient world. There are whispers, always whispers, that his tomb is more than a tomb, that it is a vault, a container, a prison. One medieval manuscript claims the tomb was sealed with magical inscriptions meant to keep watchers in the deep from escaping. Another text, translated from Arabic, claims that Alexander feared what might happen if certain relics were unearthed, and so he ordered his body entombed alongside them in a chamber that would remain closed until the end of cycles. Others say he was never buried at all, that his body was hidden by his most loyal followers and removed from history, that the tomb we seek is not in Alexandria or Egypt or anywhere we expect, but buried deep beneath some forgotten ruin in the desert, or beneath the sea, or sealed inside a mountain. And there are those who think the mystery will never be solved, that the tomb has been destroyed, looted, lost forever. But that's not how stories like this end. Because even now, researchers continue to scan the foundations of Alexandria. New technologies, ground-penetrating radar, LiDAR, remote imaging, have begun to peel back the layers of time. And though they have yet to find the tomb, they have found corridors, chambers, walls, traces of something still buried. Some say that when the tomb is found, it will be the greatest archaeological discovery of all time. Greater than Tutankhamun, greater than Troy, even greater than the Library of Alexandria. Because Alexander was not just a conqueror, he was a collector of worlds, a builder of legends. His body might still lie there undisturbed, his armor corroded, his scrolls decaying, his weapons rusted, but his presence still pulsing in the stone. And if that tomb is ever opened, what else might be released? Secrets long buried, technologies misunderstood, names of gods we have forgotten, or perhaps nothing at all. Only silence. But even that silence would speak louder than words, because it would mean the greatest story of the ancient world had not ended. It had only been waiting.
There are blank spaces on old maps, regions labeled Tartaria, vast sprawling territories stretching across Siberia, Central Asia, parts of China, even into Europe and North America. And for centuries, these maps were taken seriously. Tartaria wasn't a mythical place, it was a nation, an empire, a name stamped confidently on globes and atlases by respected cartographers. But then somewhere between the 18th and 19th centuries, it vanished. Not just as a political entity, but from memory. Historians today insist Tartaria was never a real empire, just a European mislabeling of poorly understood lands occupied by various nomadic peoples. That it was shorthand for "we don't really know who lives here." An error, nothing more. But for others, that explanation raises more questions than it answers. Why would so many maps, from France to Britain to Japan, reference Tartaria with such certainty? Why would explorers, traders, and emissaries document its existence across generations? And perhaps more importantly, if it was just a name, why was it erased so thoroughly? This is where the mystery deepens, because when you start digging into Tartaria, really digging, you find oddities, buildings that shouldn't exist, timelines that don't align, a disturbing possibility that our history may have been rewritten. Enter the theory of the lost civilization of Tartaria. According to its most radical proponents, Tartaria wasn't just real, it was an advanced global civilization, technologically superior, architecturally unmatched, spiritually refined, and most crucially, wiped from history by design. They point to impossibly grand buildings constructed in the 17th, 18th, and even early 19th centuries, structures we're told were built with primitive tools, horse-drawn carts, and candlelight. The Winter Palace in St. Petersburg, the World's Fairs of the 1800s, the massive star forts scattered across Europe and the Americas. Too massive, too ornate, too precise.
How could a fledgling America, for example, build the 1893 Chicago World's Fair, a sprawling white city with full-scale Greco-Roman architecture, in just 2 years, then tear it all down immediately after? Tartaria theorists suggest they didn't, that these structures were remnants of a prior civilization, repurposed and rebranded, that the so-called mud flood, a global cataclysm buried entire cities in sediment, served as both a literal and symbolic reset. They claim the signs are everywhere. Basement windows below street level, doorways sunken under soil, cities where the first floors are inexplicably buried, excavated only during modern renovations. Mainstream archaeology dismisses these as the result of urban development, natural erosion, or changes in city planning. But the theory won't go away, because it's not just about buildings, it's about time. The suspicion is that between the 1700s and 1800s, a historical reset occurred. Old world structures were claimed as new. Entire cultures were assimilated or erased. The true timeline was rewritten, compressed, sanitized, and filled with invented narratives. And Tartaria? It was the scapegoat. Or perhaps the victim. Some go further still. They link Tartaria to free energy, suggesting that old world architecture, domes, spires, antenna-like features, were not decorative, but functional, that these buildings harnessed atmospheric electricity, that we lost a form of clean energy once freely available to all. To skeptics, this is nonsense, pseudo-history at best. They argue there's no hard evidence, no texts, no Tartarian language, no coins, no flags. And they're right, in part. But that, say believers, is the point. If a civilization were truly erased, what would be left? And isn't absence, when surrounded by evidence of erasure, just as telling as presence? One of the most disturbing claims is that the great fires of the 1800s, in Chicago, San Francisco, Boston, Toronto, even Moscow, weren't accidents, but coordinated destruction. Excuses to level old world structures that didn't fit the new narrative. Reset events, masked as disasters. Of course, it's easy to spiral down this rabbit hole, to start seeing Tartaria in every building with classical columns or copper domes, to believe every ruin hides a secret, to view every textbook as a lie. But then you return to the maps. Those cold, factual maps from centuries ago. And you wonder, why was the name Tartaria printed so often, only to be scrubbed from all historical record? If it was meaningless, why erase it? If it was just a label, why fear it? And if it was real, even in some small regional sense, what happened to it? Tartaria remains one of the most polarizing ideas in the world of hidden history, a theory that dances between fringe and forbidden, mocked by some, but quietly studied by others. Because whether it was a forgotten empire, a misunderstood region, or a myth built on architectural awe, it touches on something deeper. The fear that our past is not what we were told, that what was once known was buried, that a great silence fell where a story once stood. And maybe, just maybe, it wasn't time that erased Tartaria, but someone.
High in the Indian Himalayas, nestled nearly 16,000 feet above sea level, lies a place that looks ordinary until the snow melts. A shallow, frozen lake, barely 130 feet wide, known as Roopkund.
But when the ice begins to thaw, bones emerge. Hundreds of them. Skulls, ribs, femurs, entire skeletons, bleached white and tangled in layers. Some still wearing rings, bangles, and tattered remnants of clothing. They're not buried. They're simply there, lying at the edge of the water like a forgotten battleground. The locals call it Skeleton Lake, and for decades, no one knew who these people were or how they died. Some believed they were soldiers from a long-forgotten war. Others said it was a royal entourage, struck by a sudden avalanche. A few claimed it was divine punishment, that the mountain gods were angered and rained death from the skies. But the truth, as always, is stranger. In the 1940s, British forest guards stumbled upon the site. What they found chilled them. Over 300 skeletons exposed by melting snow, scattered around the lake and surrounding slopes. Some were upright, others frozen mid-step, as if death had come in a moment. Early theories blamed landslides or disease, but none matched the injuries. The skulls showed signs of blunt force trauma, rounded fractures as if something large and hard had struck them from above. And not just a few, nearly all of them. Then, in 2004, a team of Indian scientists examined the remains more closely. What they uncovered was bizarre. The damage wasn't from weapons. It wasn't from rocks falling. It was consistent with, and this is real, being struck simultaneously by baseball-sized hailstones. A sudden storm hurling ice from the sky at lethal speeds. But why were they there? Who were they, and why were they marching through one of the most isolated and dangerous parts of the Himalayas? Carbon dating revealed they died around 850 AD. But in 2019, advanced DNA testing uncovered something even stranger. The skeletons didn't belong to a single group. There were at least 3 distinct genetic clusters. Some were locals from South Asia, likely pilgrims or porters, but others were of Mediterranean origin. Yes, Mediterranean, Greek-like ancestry, from thousands of miles away, in the middle of the Himalayas, 1,000 years ago. And no one can explain how they got there. There are no trade records, no written accounts, nothing that explains why people of European descent would be trekking through the mountains of India in the 9th century, or why they died together with an entirely different group of South Asians. Even stranger, their deaths weren't all at once. The bones date to separate centuries, some from 800 AD, others from the 1800s. Yet all were found together, collapsed around the same icy pool. This isn't a mass grave. It's something older, stranger, as if the lake calls people in and never lets them leave. Many now believe Roopkund isn't just a site of natural disaster, but something sacred or cursed. The lake is surrounded by steep cliffs and jagged peaks. It's treacherous to reach, and for most of the year it's frozen, locked in silence. But when the snows thaw, the dead rise. Some locals say spirits guard the area, and that trespassers are punished. Others believe it's a portal, a place where timelines fracture, where pilgrims from different centuries become caught in a repeating cycle of death. Some hikers report hearing strange echoes there, flute-like music in the wind, or whispers, Others say their compasses malfunctioned near the lake. There's no shrine, no temple, no clear reason for its ancient pull, and yet people keep finding their way there. And the lake keeps its silence. Even with all the data, all the science, Roopkund refuses to be explained. How did Mediterranean travelers reach it 1,200 years ago? Why did people return centuries later only to meet the same fate? And why are their bodies preserved still so eerily intact? Some believe Roopkund was a site of ritual, others, a trap. But maybe it's something older, a wound in the earth, where time frays, where history folds in on itself, and where those who wander too close vanish into legend.
Deep in the heart of the Ural Mountains in Russia, buried beneath layers of peat and earth, lies one of the oldest and most mysterious wooden sculptures ever discovered, the Shigir Idol. Standing over 5 meters tall, nearly 17 feet, this ancient figure is carved from a single larch tree and dates back nearly 12,000 years, making it the oldest known wooden statue on the planet. Its discovery challenges everything we thought we knew about early human culture and spirituality. The story of the Shigir Idol begins in 1894, when miners were digging in the peat bogs near the village of Shigir. As they worked, they uncovered a massive, weathered wooden figure submerged in the wet, oxygen-poor soil that had preserved it almost perfectly for millennia. Wood is a material that normally decays quickly, especially over thousands of years, but the unique conditions of the bog created a natural time capsule, allowing the statue to survive in extraordinary condition. Later scientific testing, including radiocarbon dating, revealed the statue's incredible age, around 11,500 to 12,000 years old, placing it firmly in the Mesolithic era, a time when humans were transitioning from the harsh conditions of the Ice Age to more temperate climates. This was a period of hunter-gatherer societies, people living in small groups who roamed the forests and rivers, relying on nature's cycles for survival. Yet despite the harshness of the era, these people created the Shigir Idol, a monumental work of art and spirituality carved with astonishing skill. Unlike other ancient sculptures made of stone or bone, the Shigir Idol is carved from wood, a living material that has long since vanished from most archaeological records. It stands about 5.3 meters tall in its reconstructed form, but originally may have been even taller, consisting of several wooden segments joined together. Its presence is striking and enigmatic. The face of the idol is unlike any other known from this time. Deep geometric lines create large almond-shaped eyes that seem to stare out from the centuries, a long triangular nose, and a simple horizontal line suggesting a mouth. This face, carved in bold, sharp strokes, gives the statue an almost otherworldly or supernatural presence. But the carvings do not stop there. The entire surface of the Shigir Idol is covered in complex patterns, zigzags, spirals, and series of notches arranged vertically along its length. These symbols appear to form some kind of coded message or symbolic language. Many researchers have speculated that the carvings might represent ancient cosmology, tribal laws, or spiritual beliefs, possibly encoding a map of the universe or a record of sacred knowledge. But no one knows for certain what the symbols mean, and the message remains frustratingly out of reach. What was the purpose of this statue? Why did people create such a massive, detailed figure? Anthropologists suggest it was more than just art. In the Mesolithic world, spiritual beliefs were closely tied to nature and survival.
The Shigir Idol may have served as a guardian spirit, protecting the community from dangers both physical and supernatural. It could have been an ancestral figure, a symbol of tribal identity, or a totem used in rituals to connect the living with the spirit realm. Some scholars believe the idol was placed at a sacred site, perhaps marking a boundary or a meeting place for ritual ceremonies. Imagine a group of early humans gathering around this towering figure, their faces flickering in the firelight, listening to the chants of shamans who sought to communicate with the unseen forces of the forest. The idol would have been both an object of awe and reverence, a bridge between their world and the mysteries beyond. The spirals and zigzags carved into the wood might represent natural elements such as water, wind, or lightning, or abstract ideas like life cycles, death, and rebirth. The arrangement of the notches and lines may have functioned as a kind of prehistoric calendar, tracking the changing seasons or celestial events critical for hunting and gathering. Modern technology has given researchers new tools to study the idol in detail. High-resolution 3D scans reveal fine carving marks made by stone tools, showing the incredible craftsmanship involved. Microscopic analysis has shed light on how the wood was shaped and preserved. Yet despite all this knowledge, the deeper meaning of the idol's symbols remains a mystery, like a secret language spoken only by its creators. Compared to other ancient monuments, such as Stonehenge or Göbekli Tepe, the Shigir Idol stands apart for its unique material, age, and artistry. While those stone sites mark early human settlements and rituals, the idol is a direct expression of spiritual and symbolic thought carved from the living forest itself. It forces us to reconsider the complexity of Mesolithic cultures, showing that even in an era we often think of as primitive, humans possessed sophisticated beliefs and artistic expression. Its survival is nothing short of miraculous. Over thousands of years, most wooden objects decay and disappear, leaving only stone or bone artifacts behind. The peat bog's unique environment created a protective shield, preserving this relic for future generations. Today, it rests carefully in a museum in Yekaterinburg, Russia, where it draws visitors fascinated by its age, mystery, and beauty. The Shigir Idol reminds us that humanity's urge to create, to tell stories, and to connect with the spiritual world is ancient, deeply rooted in the human experience. It speaks silently across the millennia, inviting us to listen, to wonder, and to imagine the lives and beliefs of those who carved it in a world long gone but never forgotten. It stands as a towering testament to the power of memory, art, and faith, a wooden guardian of secrets that may never be fully understood but will forever inspire awe.
Far off in the vast Pacific Ocean, on a remote speck of volcanic rock known as Rapa Nui, what we call Easter Island, stand nearly 1,000 massive stone figures. They're called moai, and they have stared inland for centuries with hollow eyes and heavy silence. Giants were raised by a people isolated from the rest of the world for generations. But the mystery isn't just how they were carved, it's why. The island itself is tiny. You can walk from one side to the other in a single day. There are no great forests anymore, no bustling cities, only grassy hills, wind-scoured cliffs, and these solemn figures, each facing away from the ocean toward the island's heart. For decades, archaeologists have tried to decipher the purpose of the moai. Were they ancestors watching over their descendants, or something more symbolic, cosmic even? And then there's the unsettling question: how were they moved? With no wheels, no beasts of burden, and limited trees for timber, the people of Rapa Nui somehow transported dozens of these stone giants across miles of uneven terrain. Some theories suggest they were rolled on logs, others propose intricate rope systems, but the island's trees disappeared mysteriously not long after the Moai began to rise. Coincidence? Or did the obsession with building these figures lead to ecological collapse and the downfall of an entire civilization? But it goes deeper. In the 20th century, native Rapa Nui oral traditions shared a strange idea. The Moai walked. Not metaphorically, literally. They were said to sway and step on their own, guided by ancient chants and rituals. Of course, science scoffed, until modern experiments showed that with the right balance and ropes, a few people could rock a statue forward like a refrigerator, making it walk. The legends, it seems, weren't entirely wrong. But even if we accept that, other puzzles remain. Each Moai was crowned with a massive red stone hat called a pukao, weighing several tons. Placing these atop a 30-foot statue seems nearly impossible without cranes or ingenuity we've yet to fully understand. No written language survived to explain the rituals. Only fragments of a lost script called Rongo Rongo, a series of glyphs carved into wood, remain. To this day, no one has been able to decipher it. If decoded, it might tell us why the Moai were made, or what beliefs drove the islanders to dedicate generations to their creation. But the key, if it ever existed, is gone. The island's mystery isn't limited to engineering marvels. Its decline is equally haunting. By the time Europeans arrived in the 18th century, the once thriving culture had collapsed. The statues were toppled, the forests were gone, and the people were at war with one another. Some accounts speak of famine, others whisper of cannibalism. The very builders of the Moai turned against their own creations. But was it internal conflict alone, or was something larger at play? Perhaps contact with outsiders long before official discovery. Some researchers point to possible pre-European contact with South American cultures, citing similarities in tools and crops. Others note that Easter Island lies within the realm of the legendary lost continent Mu, a fabled Pacific civilization said to have vanished in cataclysm. The Moai, they say, may not be simple tribal icons, but echoes of a civilization that predated history itself. Even the faces of the Moai seem to challenge our understanding. Though mostly buried to their shoulders, full excavations show they have elongated bodies, detailed carvings, and even inscriptions on their backs. These are not crude works. They are refined, intentional, and eerily uniform. Who taught the Rapa Nui to build with such precision? And why were so many statues abandoned mid-construction? Some still lie in the quarry at Rano Raraku, half-finished, frozen in time like a forgotten task interrupted by some unseen calamity. A giant one, over 270 tons, was started but never moved. What happened? Was it just dwindling resources? A cultural collapse? Or did they know something was coming? As night falls on Easter Island and the winds howl across the plains, the Moai remain still, silent witnesses to something we may never truly uncover. Their eyes, once inlaid with coral, have long since gone dark, but their presence endures, unsettling and unexplainable. These statues were never meant to be art. They were something more. Monuments of devotion, warnings to the future, or perhaps vessels, anchored in stone to guard the soul of a civilization now swallowed by time. Who built them? Why did they stop? And what were they trying to leave behind? We are left only with questions, and the stone faces, still watching.
we've reached the edge of what we know, and what lies beyond is still wrapped in stone, silence, and time. From vanished cities to impossible technologies, from messages carved into monoliths to civilizations erased from memory, these are not just gaps in history. They are fractures, signs that something greater once walked this earth, and that the stories we've been told may only be part of a much deeper truth. But maybe that's the point. Maybe some knowledge was never meant to be found easily. Maybe these ancient puzzles weren't left behind by accident, but as a test, to see who still dares to question. If you've made it this far, you are one of those few. The curious, the seekers, the ones who feel that ancient echoes still whisper beneath the noise of modern life. So if this journey stirred something in you, subscribe to join me for more forgotten truths. Leave a comment about which mystery shook you the most, and share this with someone who still believes there's more out there. Until next time, stay curious, stay awake, and never stop digging.